So now we've got an impulse slot on BigSky MX that allows you to load in and edit your own impulses. Can you tell us some of what's going on there?
Sure. So the impulse type is a convolution reverb, and what this means is that it does a convolution of your guitar input with a pre-recorded impulse response. Convolution reverbs are really, really good at capturing physical spaces like halls and rooms, and also are very good at capturing devices like plates and springs. So we're going to show you some of the ways that you can use the impulse type on BigSky MX to chop up your impulses and do some fun stuff. I'm going to start with a impulse response of a warehouse that we have loaded on here. And so if I hit it, you can hear it's a really long impulse. And the first thing that I kind of hear is there's a lot of low end. So I'm going to cut out all the low end. And then you get that out of there. And then next thing we can do is can see what happens when we cut down the decay. So the decay puts an envelope on the impulse response to make it shorter. Shorter, we can make it 10% as long as the original. So it dies out really quick. That's really good for shortening impulses. There's another way to do it with the stretch parameter, where you can stretch it out. You can resample the impulse to make it longer or shorter, and that gives some interesting results. So let's hear what happens if we stretch it out to 2 times as long. You can hear that enveloped and then stretched impulse response now has a lot more low frequencies in it, and it also can hear that it stretches out the initial echo too. Let's go to 4 times. Let's turn up the decay a little bit. You can hear it's definitely sounding different and interesting. I'm going to reset the stretch. And then I'll turn up the decay again. Then I'll show what happens when you use the attack parameter. So that's the original. If I turn up the attack parameter here, it gets rid of that initial echo, so you can give it a softer onset. It's a much softer reverb now. And now let's show what happens when you reverse it. So I'm going to go to the direction parameter, go to reverse. So now it'll be playing the impulse response backwards. That's a cool sound. I'm going to reload our initial preset. And then I'm going to show another way that you can shorten the impulse, which is with you can, instead of having an envelope on the decay, you can set it to gate. So gate is kind of like the old gated reverb trick that was used for drums.
Phil Collins.
Yeah, Phil Collins. But instead of an envelope, it'll just chop it off without trying to cut it down. So if I set the decay really short and set it to gate, you can hear how it just kind of cuts off. And it works differently from traditional gated reverb, which was looking at the output and then it was cutting off the signal. This just has all of your decays will be exactly that long.
A fixed time,
yeah. You can also add modulation to your convolution reverb with the mod knob. So with no modulation, and then if I add some modulation on there, get that cool chorusing effect. And then with the tone knob, I can make it brighter, really accentuate the high end, or darker. And of course I can add pre-delay on there too, which may be a little hard to hear in this scenario. And then another cool thing I can do is I can use the feedback parameter to feed the output of the reverb back into the pre-delay. So if I turn this up, turn the pre-delay up, turn the feedback up, I can get some kind of cool stuff going that way. It's fun to play with.
And there's the infinite feature as well on.
Yeah, so we also have the infinite feature, which is a granular sample and hold situation. So it works pretty nicely because it will cycle out your old signal in favor of the new signal. It'll duck out the old signal as you play more into it. So this helps it not get all saturated with stuff that you might not want in there. So if I play something and I hit the infinite, it'll sustain that. Sustain that forever until it gets new input. While this is really good for physical spaces like we were talking about before, it doesn't capture things like distortion from overdrive things or from tubes or some of the things that might be in physical devices like plates. It also can't capture things like modulation because that's not time invariant. But that doesn't really mean that you shouldn't try, because you can really just put any kind of, you can play anything as an impulse response. Just because it's not meant to capture that perfectly doesn't mean you can't get cool sounds out of it anyway. So you can put really any audio file you want in the impulse slot and you can get some really neat results.